My self-worth is tied into people wanting me to be there in their life. People m- wanting me to help them, people wanting to be around me, people the sheer desire, not
Right,
the actual result of the desire, but just the desire alone.
right.
But
But
once that desire is fulfilled, I'm then overwhelmed because it's too many people. And then the other eye-opening piece for me was when we were talking as a family in full transparency, talking as a family, and they're talking about how they want to live forever, and how they want to stay in shape and do all these things so that they can live forever. And I'm like, it was genuine, not joking. I don't feel that way at all. I'm tired, and he can take me whenever he wants me because I
Mhm,
am tired, and
mhm.
that actually sounds miserable. Like the thought, you know. And so I had to, like, number one, it made me sad, and that I felt that way, that I didn't have a desire.
Hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrianne Murchison, and welcome to episode 167 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. Well, this is a extra special episode for me today. I think it's a profound episode, if that's the right word. My niece is joining me on this episode, Tonya Anderson, and she has been on Let's Start Healing before, not too long ago. She and my nephews and I, around during the holidays, a little after Thanksgiving, I published an episode where we were all chit chatting around the microphone. And this episode was unexpected for me because she said to me, "Hey, I want to come on your podcast and I want to interview you about you. I want to ask you questions." And so I thought, okay. But then what actually happened was, in her asking me questions, we spent a lot of time focusing on aspects of her life. And I think that some of the things that Tonya experiences, they are things that so many people go through. And I will share more in a moment. And I hope that you really are able to take away something from the conversation that we have. Tonya is 42. I was about to say 43, but she's 42. She looks like she's in high school. But actually, she is a married mother of three, and her oldest is in her 20s and out of the house. And then she has an 18-year-old who is about to graduate. He is about to graduate from high school, and then he'll be out of the house more than likely. And then she has a very young teenager. So, some of the dynamics that I want to share, and then I want to ask you some questions before we get to our conversation, is I want to give you a little background on Tonya. I have two older brothers who have passed away, and I've shared that with you before. And Tonya is the daughter of my brother, Jeff. And uh, my brother Jeff and her mom, they came together. Well, they started dating long distance as teenagers because I grew up in Buffalo. Tonya is from Virginia. That's where my grandmother lived. We'd go there for vacations. And her mom, Vanessa, lived across the street from my grandmother. So it was, that meet cute kind of thing, I guess you could say, or they literally, I know I've known her mom and her family my entire life because of going to my grandmother's house uh, for summer vacations. We would go there and stay there for 2 weeks. So Tanya's mom and my brother Jeff, they got married and they had Tonya, and they actually had a son who was born after Tonya, and he actually passed away in a car accident that I've talked about. We have talked about, she and I, on a previous episode. And So eventually, Tonya and I keep saying Tonya, but her mom, Vanessa, and my brother Jeff, they eventually split up later in life. And later on, he met my nephew Justin's mother, and thus Justin was born. And then you've met Justin as well in the past. So Tanya spent a lot of her life growing up after her mom and dad split up. She grew up in her grandmother's house, her grandmother on her mom's side. She really grew up in that household. So she describes that a little bit, and she speaks about her grandmother on her mom's side. Shortly before her grandmother passed, how she became ill. She talks a little bit about that, but I wanted to just kind of give some context to some of the things that come up. And in the beginning of the conversation, she's asking me about really uh, behaviors, character traits that we tend to pick up from our parents, and how that can be passed down. Different things can be passed down from one generation to another. I'll tell you, my mother was a worrier, and my mom worried about so many things, and she definitely worried about her kids. Big time worrier. And so it has been work on my part to not be a worrier. And I do worry, but I try not to worry to an extreme. I do, I definitely worry, but I try not to worry to an extreme, because I saw what could happen with my mom in terms of her stress when she would worry. So Tanya was asking me, I'm just throwing that out as an example. She didn't ask me about that, but she was asking me about different things that we try to overcome from our parents or our grandparents, and things that we try to embrace as we go forward in life. She reminds me of my mom in many ways. They're both Virgos, my late mom. And so when we refer to uh, my grandmother was Julia, and she was a very bold, brave woman, unapologetic. And it's not like she walked around like, I'm unapologetic, just the way she was. She was a Leo. And so if you've ever met a Leo woman, then I will say that I'm a Leo moon. I am a Leo moon. So she refers to my grandmother as Grandma Juju. So that is who she is talking about when she brings her up. So we get into some deep things, and we talk about self-worth, as I think I mentioned, and we talk about wanting to live, having a will to live. And so as you listen to this conversation, I have some thoughts that I would just like for you to have on your mind. And uh, one question I have for you is, have you ever struggled with self-worth? If you watch this podcast or listen to this podcast, that is something that I like to delve into, because that is uh, something that I have struggled with. Has your environment, this is also in context of our conversation, has your environment while you were growing up shaped the way that you see yourself today and the way that you interact with the world? What impact does your environment have on you? Have you ever felt like you did not have a will to live? And what gave you hope? And what helped you to keep going? Have you ever longed for a deeper connection with God, which this podcast is rooted in, our relationship with God and how we live authentically? And how have you taken the steps forward in wanting that deeper connection and that deeper relationship? What does it mean to live a healthy life for you, physically, mentally, emotionally? And what steps have you taken towards that? And can you relate to growing up around what you might look back now and see as dysfunction? I personally say, and when I say that, I mean in terms of family or environment, I personally believe every family is dysfunctional. I haven't seen a family that I can say, this family has never had any dysfunction. I have never, ever seen that. So I kind of think that that's normal. And the question really is, how do we adjust to these things that come up? And I want to take that back. I said I haven't seen a family. I do see young families now that I have not seen that arise in their family. So I will say that. I will say that. But what has your journey looked like in terms of growing up around dysfunction, whether it was around alcoholism, some kind of abuse in your home, whether you witnessed it, whether you experienced it, uh, around there was some dysfunction possibly around finances. Uh, People are living in all different types of conditions these days. So many different types of conditions. And so, really, the question is, how do we get through these times? And how do we heal after we are able to move forward and we look back and we find that we're still impacted by it? The question is, how do we heal around that? So, as you listen to this, I want to invite you to reflect on your own journey and what that looks like for you. What has that looked like? And possibly now you're still experiencing effects of your journey. I'm experiencing some effects of my journey that don't have to do with anything that she and I talked about, not really. But I know I can trace some things back to uh, a time. I can trace some things back from what I'm experiencing right now. And as I sit with them, I really try to sit with a serious, real conversation with God. And something that I did just today is I started just writing out in my journal. I just started writing a few things. And what was coming to me was things that I need to do for myself. That's what was coming to me. So, in some parts, I might be writing out how I feel about something that I'm experiencing right now. But also, big time was this awareness that was coming to me through this communication with God of, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to practice. This is what I need to be aware of. So, uh, she and I talk about the importance of going within, and I'm just going to get to it. I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. Tonya, I mentioned that she's a married mother of three, and she is also a chief petty officer in the U.S. Navy. And if you stay to the end, then I may have a little uh, video for you. Okay? Let's meet her. Let's get started and let's start healing. Hey, Tonya.
Hi, Adrianne.
Call me Adrianne.
Well, thank you for taking some time out to talk to me. I feel like the timing of this conversation is perfect because you just finished exploring love and what that looks like for people. And it's also Women's History Month. And one of the things that I'm seeing or coming across in my relationships with women that I've been around here lately and myself is what our relationship with self-love is. Like what does that look like for us? Are we showing up for us in the ways that we should? What things go into the being of us, like at our essence? And how much are we keeping for us and how much are we giving away without pouring back into ourselves? So it made me think of in looking at that with myself, I started questioning what could be some potential generational things that we've passed down from woman to woman as it pertains to love for our family and how we show love in that way and how we show love to ourselves. If generations before have struggled with that and how they overcame that and just what that looks like generationally, if there were any generational curses, I guess that's pretty heavy, but you know, if there were any in that capacity where this has been a struggle from generation to generation that we never quite overcame. And that's something that I know for the younger on our side of the family is when it comes to immediate family, it's you, me, and Grandma March, you know, and Grandma Juju was a only child, so it was just her, only girl, and then Grandma Marge, only girl, was just her. Then she got married. So her husband, two boys, and then you. So it was you and her, female dynamic wise. And then I'm the only girl for a while. It's just been onesies, twosies from generation to generation. And that's not necessarily easy. On my mother's side, they had more women, but my grandma was a heavy lifter. You know, she came from big families. She was one of the oldest. Then she was like a staple in that family. So there was a lot of giving and not a lot of receiving. Then my mother was the oldest, smart, responsible, way more older than her siblings. There was a lot of giving. You know, I think she was a giver in her relationship. I'm not sure. It seems like it from the stories I've been told. And then here in my relationship, and how I interact, I give a lot, even when it's not asked. And then I notice things that it brings up for me. So, with all that said, I know that was wordy.
You're like, "Go." So, yeah, you said a lot. You said a lot. So you're talking about you want me to speak to, like, say, things that could be passed down from generation and how that might relate to, self-love and
But
self-care, doing things differently?
I have
Or
questions, specific
okay.
questions that could make it easy, but that's just the background to how this whole thing came to be. But it's more of a help me help me figure it out, you know.
Well,
So
so
one,
now okay, so your questions will speak to what you wanna figure out.
yes,
Okay.
learning from you and learning from, you know, the generations before you. So, and these questions I wrote over a period of a month. So different questions will come up throughout the month. So I'm trying to figure out what makes most sense as far as the starting ground. I guess the one that's at the core of the things that I just said were, in what ways did you see the female ancestors in our family struggle with self love? Did you see any evidence of that? Um, at any point with any of our ancestors?
Well, when I think about, who was in my life or who the women on my mom's side of the family, there was, you said Grandma Juju, that's my grandmother and your great grandmother. And
Mhm,
so there was my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother, which was A.
mhm,
And I feel like I was about to say her mother because I feel like I knew her, but she had passed when I was born, and her name was Laura. Everyone called her Ma. So I could more speak to that side of the family than my father's side, where there's a lot of women on that side of the family because he had sisters, and it was my grandmother. So I could more. He had 3 sisters, so I'm gonna stay on my mom's side, where I was more focused when it comes to your question. And my mom was the only one that I felt struggled with self-worth. I don't feel like my grandmother did, who you call Grandma Juju, and I mean, as well as me, she was a confident woman, and sometimes I draw on her, now when I wanna feel confident, when I wanna just be unapologetic and stay in that mindset, I will, draw on her spirit and her strength, and, uh I didn't get to know that well. She died when I was a child, but I knew that, she was a very determined woman, and same with, her mother. My mom, I did take on some of her stuff because my father, uh, wasn't faithful, and, although, we were an intact family, and I love him. He's passed, but I love him with all my heart. He wasn't faithful. And so I know that affected her self esteem and her self worth. And that I took that on as a young adult where I was involved with men and they would see other people when it was just supposed to be me and them, and that definitely fed into my self-worth. And, I allowed that to happen because I had low self-worth. And, my mindset was thinking about my dad. My dad was never going to leave the family. He was very committed to our family. No matter what happened, he wasn't leaving. So my attitude in my 20s, with my boyfriend at the time was always, oh, he'll come back. He'll come back. And that was something I definitely took on from my mom. Never said that, but, that's what I saw. So it wasn't until I was in my 40s when I started shifting as far as that goes in my relationships. And I had to really, really work on it.
The when you reference low self-worth, the internal uh, it seems like the affairs and things would be an external factor. Are there any internal factors that you can point to for yourself or your mom that that was the driving bolt behind the low self-worth feeling?
Well, I felt like I wasn't lovable, even though with my mom, she never knew her father. So I think that played a role into her always having a desire to be loved. And, I don't think anybody could love my mom or show her more love than I did, but it was still um, a need that she had where she didn't, in her own mind and her own spirit, where she felt like she needed more love. And I think that came from her never knowing her father. And so for me, which I have not shared the details, but I have shared that I experienced sexual abuse as a child. And for me, it came from that. It came from, well, I must not be lovable, which makes no sense, but still that's what I
Mhm.
what fed into me. And I just always felt like, um, uh, could a man love me for me? Could a man love me for me? And so it wasn't like I said, I was in my 30s when I started thinking about self-esteem and understanding that that was what my issue was,
Mhm.
and I slowly started to work on it, and then my spirituality helped me to get to loving myself, which started happening in my 40s.
Hmm, that's ironic because that's where I am now. But I do remember as a child feeling incredibly insecure, and my family told me I was pretty and, gave me all the, kind words. And but I also too as a child experienced, sexual abuse as a child, and I really don't know how that played into how I ended up, other than maybe thinking about it right now, having the desire to be liked, having the desire to be desired, having the desire for people to want me around, maybe, could be because I know that that desire is huge for me. And I think in some of my people pleasing, it's not from a fear of them leaving, but more so the desire to want them to be around. It's weird. Makes no sense.
Your desire to want them to be around?
My
Or
desire to
them?
want them to want to be around, because I don't think it's a desire for me to want them around because I'm exhausted from all the things. My body can't withstand all these things, seats that I'm planning to want them to want me. I can't withstand it. You
No.
know, but I don't have the capacity, the physical capacity to, but I'm still, it's like that's what my self-worth is tied into.
Yeah. You're
And
you're you're are you saying that your self-worth is tied into being available for too many people? So you're spread in a lot of directions?
my self-worth is tied into people wanting me to be there in their life. People wanting wanting me to help them, people wanting to be around me, people, the sheer desire, not
Right,
the actual result of the desire, but just the desire alone.
right,
But
but
once that desire is fulfilled, I'm then overwhelmed because it's too many people.
exactly. That's what I was
Yeah,
about to say. Yeah. You have to respond to that desire in one way or another,
right,
either with inaction or action.
and then comes a resentment that I created. You know what I'm saying? It's my fault. So, and if I really challenge myself to pull back the layers, I feel like I can point to where it could have originated in that area of my childhood.
Mhm. And are you saying it originated with the abuse you just mentioned or somewhere else?
Yeah, because I think I perceived, and this is only in thinking about it right now, because I haven't unpacked that in anybody's therapy office yet. I don't tend to hold on to therapists long.
Mhm.
But, because I didn't perceive what happened to me as nobody's gonna love me, I'm unlovable. I perceived it as this is the only way. Giving something or participating in something I don't want to participate in is the only way that I would be welcomed or loved or well received.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the through line.
Mhm.
And even though it didn't necessarily, it it showed up in relationships in not in a overly promiscuous way, not
Mhm.
overly so. It was still times, but
I know. I was like, "Okay."
but there were times, but I don't mean when I say not overly, I don't mean like I took sexuality and wore it with a badge of honor and be like, I don't care who it is. If any night, any day, I was still like a romantic. I still wanted a boyfriend. A lot of my actions were based off of wanting a boyfriend, not, I don't care, boom, 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 boom. There was still some type of desire for a longer um, long lasting connection tied to it,
Mhm,
even though it still resulted in promiscuity in some ways. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
It wasn't rooted in that.
I think that what comes out in all different experiences, like, your experience was different from my experience in terms of sexual abuse, and then somebody else would have had another experience. I think that the one thing is, the common thread is a lack of boundaries that we end up having. And
Mhm.
so, getting the acquiring and taking on a sense of value and self-worth helps, with that comes setting boundaries. So even though you can still want people to, that's one of your love languages maybe, that's what you like, and so it doesn't have to mean like, oh, that's wrong or anything like that. It can mean, in my view, just setting boundaries, finding a way to set boundaries, and you can't show up for everybody all the time, or anytime. It's hard to show up.
100% boundaries has always been something hard for me. And I was telling you about a situation last week where I was firm, and but I agonized about it for days. And then also, one of the things that I noticed about myself is I'll hold on to something and not
Mhm,
speak. And then when I do speak, it comes out very abrasive because I just have to get it out. Because I've been, going on and on and on about it, internally. Nobody knew, and I'm struggling with it. And then it's just like, boom, here it is. So that's something I'm going into my villain era. And some people may think I've been there for quite a while, but but in the discovery of boundaries and what that looks like for me, I know that I'm going to have some missteps. I know that in trying to exercise boundaries, is some people, no matter how nice I'm going to be about executing them, they may be offended by it because that's not how they're used to me showing up. So I have to give space for that. Doesn't make you wrong, me wrong or right. That's just what's going to be. Not everybody's going to be happy. It's something that people aren't going to be used to hear and know. And it's not something that I'm going to perfect right away. So I'm going to make some
mhm,
mistakes in that journey for finding how to be assertive and not passive or passive aggressive, you know?
mhm,
But
mhm,
so I joke around and I call it my villain era because I'm just giving space for mistakes to happen or people to not necessarily like hearing no or not like hearing that I can't do that right now, whatever the case may be. But it's something that I can't afford to postpone or put off.
mm-mm, mm-mm. No. I'm thinking about, as you're talking, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm thinking about a girlfriend of mine who she was starting to have some medical issues because she was spreading herself so thin. And she's been on my podcast before talking about this. But, I think she had a panic attack. I think uh, she had some serious stuff where she had to go to the hospital. And she had to start thinking about things that would help her to relax, that would bring her peace, how to take time for herself. And now she's very unapologetic about saying that she can't show up for something. She will. Just last night, she couldn't show up for something because she had something happening was 2 nights ago because she had something happening last night, and she was like, I cannot make it." If you ask her to do something, "Can you go here or there?" If sometimes she'll say, "Well, I don't know. I have to let you know on that day." I think it's become so commonplace now and so necessary.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be doing her work. If she has a little, what do they call it, workbook for how she got there, it'd be much appreciated. So I have another question for you. What is your relationship with fear?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I was just talking about this yesterday because I have, as you know, a strong relationship with God. And something that I'm realizing is that when I'm in fear, I acknowledge that I'm in fear and I try to do things to get my mind off of it. So, maybe I'll go to some spiritual teacher on YouTube or something, or I'll put some music on, or I'll watch something that relaxes me. But I am aware that I'm in fear, but I also understand that I'm trying to control a situation and I'm not allowing for the grace of God to work this out. I talk to God about it. I pray. I do different things to sort of reassure me and understand that I don't have the confidence that I had or the strong knowing that I had when I wasn't in fear. Basically, I just keep moving forward and I'm aware that, it only takes a little bit of willingness and a little bit of faith. You can be in fear and the thing can still work out. I just try to keep moving forward and try to, you know, cope with it.
How broadly do you let your fear meter expand beyond the things of your control? Like there's fear for things that you may be responsible or tasked with on a daily basis. There could be some fear involved in some of those. But then there could also be fear in long-term things that you may have even less control over. And then you look around and it's so much going on in the world. And there can be fear around that where you have almost or people lately have been feeling they have no control over. So how do you navigate how far do you go out in letting yourself experience fear and how do you navigate the things that are beyond your reach?
Um, because I think about all the dynamics that you're talking about, and I guess I just trying to think how to answer that. I'm at the point where I try not to let fear control me too much. I think fear at the moment is mostly around money. I think the other things as it comes up, and when I say that, when I say around money, I don't mean like all the time. I mean, a situation might come up or something like that. And then, I might be in fear. But the other things, um, I just sort of look at them in the context of God and, the way that I view God and spirituality.
For some people, they'll only put their energy into or allow themselves to feel things around the things that they can control, right? But then there are things that are going on that for some can produce fear or anxiety, and those who don't, or those who may feel like they have no control over that, either won't acknowledge it, won't pay attention to it, will completely block anything out so that it doesn't reach them because they can't do anything about it. Then you
Um,
have some that stay immersed, they pay attention, they know they don't have any control, it's troubling. So if that's the case, how do you still manage troubling things that, like broader things that you may not necessarily have any control over.
So, like the world today and politics, is that a good example?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay. So, first of all, I temper how much I take in. So, I want to stay informed, but I'm not watching the news from the morning till I go to bed at night. I'm not doing that. Now, I may keep up online, what the headlines are, and then there might be a show that I might wanna watch, that night, but I'm not even gonna watch that, like, right before I go to bed because I don't wanna go to bed with that kind of agita. So, um, excuse me, I kinda temper the way that I take it in and the way that I view the world today. I just view that in relationship my relationship with God, and, I don't understand the way that I my perception and opinion of the way, the world is at this particular moment in time. I don't understand why it's this way, but I just cope with it in my relationship with God. I pray about it with him and I pray about people, and I understand that even though I may have a serious visceral dislike for a figure, a person, um I also understand that that person is a child of God just like I am. So, I just try to look at it in that context as best I can.
Okay. What specific lessons can you think of that your mother instilled in you that you carry with you?
The biggest one is, well, first of all, I feel like she and I had the same heart, and, I have her heart and her caring for other people, caring about other people and their well-being. But the biggest thing she, gave to me is to not let anybody change who I am, and that was a big part of me coming into my self-worth, to appreciate who I am, as a person. And, she just, she always, would tell me, "Oh, you're so beautiful, all of this." But she always said, "You're more beautiful on the inside." She always would tell me that she thought I was so beautiful on the inside. And she like I said, don't let anybody change who you are. And I had this experience that I've mentioned before, at work where I was worried about something, and she said, um, "Do they know you?" And she just kept saying, "Do they know you?" And so then I said, "Yeah, but you don't understand." And she says, "Well, they know you. Well, then okay, you don't have anything to worry about." And so a lot of times I will just think, well, do they know me? And oh, they don't know me,
Mhm.
and uh, I can't worry about, everybody else's opinion. Not that I never do. I do sometimes, care about other people's opinion, but uh, that's what you know, that was a real gift that she gave me, a real gift.
And who are you? Like, who are you on the inside? And when were you able to identify that and stand confidently in who you are?
I'm aware of both my spirit side and my human side. So as a human, I'm a person that is so multidimensional. Like I'm very sensitive, but I'm also fierce. I'm also a force. and I like to laugh. I like adventure. I'm curious and I like to learn and to grow and be stimulated in every way. But, the first thing is, mentally and emotionally, like I like to be stimulated and engaged. And I'm aware that I have, gifts as far as recognizing things in people and gifts in terms of common sense and logic. And, nobody can take that away from me. Like I know what I know, you
Mhm.
know, as far as what my gifts are. So not that, and I'm not in any way saying, oh, I'm always right, or it's not about anything like that. It's about me having confidence in what I might see. And then somebody might tell me what I see is not there. Well, no, I see what I know what I see,
Mhm.
so I, uh, I'm a loving person, that's something that's transfers from my spirit to, me as a human. I'm a very loving person and I'm never going to intentionally try to hurt anyone. Now, I might hurt someone, but I'm not out to hurt anybody. I'm not out to manipulate anyone, so I'm, I just, I like who I am. I don't always like what I do, but I like, I like who I am.
Right, and when were you able to really see yourself fully? At what age or time in your life were you able to see yourself fully and be confident in that?
Probably 60. I mean, I started getting there, in my 50s.
Mhm,
I started getting there, but it's been in recent, years that I've really been like, "Oh, okay. Alright," you know? But, I would say I wanna say something. Self-love and self-care is really honoring yourself.
mhm,
And, I don't think man or woman, I don't think a lot of us, do that. It's really about honoring yourself, and it doesn't mean, taking away from somebody else. And I have this friend, and we are, new friends, but we're becoming really good friends and bonding like a girlfriend, this isn't, I'm talking about just like a friend, right? We had to have this conversation because of this project, for lack of a better word. And I, and we were, I want to say, for lack of a better word, having a difference of opinion, but, we needed to talk about this project. And I wanted to honor myself, but I also, it was very, very important to me that she received what I was saying in the right way, and one, I don't want to damage our friendship because it's a new friendship, and we're becoming good friends. And I don't, I wanted her to know that, I understand her perspective or, her side of this situation. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the tools and the skills of, thinking about what the other person needs
mhm,
instead of just what I need. And so I was just trying to work it out in terms of being able to, and I didn't want to deal with this, but
mhm.
it's like a situation where it's like you have to share how you feel. And that's the honoring, of yourself. And that's self love.
100%. I agree with you. I think, though, as humans, sometimes we allow ourselves to be distracted by busyness. And in that busyness, we never take the time to learn ourselves enough to honor ourselves. And the ways in which we think we might be honoring ourselves may be more so instant gratification, or instant reward. But because we don't really know ourselves or taking the time to figure out who we are, we don't
Mhm.
honor ourselves properly.
Right.
So I think I asked you the question and I asked you how long because I'm just now truly getting to the point of asking myself those questions like, who are you? If we strip everything down, we take all these people away, all these tasks away, who are you and what do you stand for? And I see glimpses of that. I'm figuring it out.
Mhm.
But if I had to say I knew who I was or had any idea who I was or what I was about right now, that would be a bold-faced lie. So when you say 60, you were laughing. I was thinking 60 where? Because nobody
You were thinking 60 where?
like, no part of you looks 60. It's like 40. So I
Oh,
was I don't
oh,
I know. But I'm
oh,
like, these listeners are not gonna believe you because you look
yeah. I don't believe it. I don't walk around saying that, so I was mindful that I was saying it.
but, but also, like, I do think that that is a realistic time frame. I feel grateful that I'm beginning that journey now, and I'm at a point where my children are transitioning out the door, so I'm getting less and less of them, so I have more time, but I do think it's something that if I could invite other people to like sit with and maybe even start compiling a list, like even if you're talking in everyday talk and you realize that, hey, I really feel passionately about this, let me jot this down and come back to this and explore this further. I think that's what my self-discovery is looking like, the things
Mhm,
that I'm immovable on, and I'm so open-minded and I'm so easily able to see both sides. So if I'm unmovable on something, that's really saying something about what I'm about. And so that's
mhm.
worth making a note of and adding that to the list or exploring it further or making sure that it's in the right proportion or balance. But that's what my process for learning who I am looks like.
Mhm.
Taking more time for me and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think, I love that, and I think that, um, you are at the point where you're ready, you're ready and you're, like, I wanna say almost, um, tired of not honoring yourself in the way that you want to honor yourself, and the way that you want to love yourself.
Well, it's been coming in phases. For an example, I had my hair locked. I felt like that was too easy because and I get this from my mom. You just wake up, quickly get dressed, no makeup, throw my hair in a ponytail, just bare bones. And I want to start giving myself more time. Clearly, I'm still trying to. Clearly, I mean, had I not gone to work today, I would have. But But that was one step saying, you need to spend some more time with you, caring about your hair, your skin, whatever, and stop making things easy so that you don't have to do it or it's a quick fix. Like really spend time with yourself and understand that there are going to be consequences for you not spending time with yourself. You can't not spend time with yourself and walk out the door and nobody be able to tell you didn't spend time with yourself because they're going to be able to tell. And
Mhm,
that's the accountability piece for me. Didn't care before, it's something that I'm aware of now and I'm working towards making that commitment to self. It's not a vanity thing. It's like it's a commitment to self.
Mhm.
And then the other eye-opening piece for me was when we were talking as a family in full transparency, talking as a family, and they're talking about how they want to live forever, and how they want to stay in shape and do all these things so that they can live forever. And I'm like, it was genuine, not joking. I don't feel that way at all. I'm tired, and he can take me whenever he wants me because I
Mhm.
am tired, and that actually sounds miserable. Like the thought, you know. And so I had to, like, number one, it made me sad, and that I felt that way, that I didn't have a desire to, once my kids were out the door, God could do whatever he wanted, and I was at peace. And there was no commitment. And there's also a book, a unapologetic guide to Black mental health, I think is the name. And there's a chapter in that about like a passive suicide of mind state. And that's something that has honestly been on my mind for years, like in not going to medical appointments, not taking the medicine as prescribed, taking care of everybody else. I spent hours attending to a non-emergent medical need for Jalen, and I won't even take 45 minutes to go to the doctor for me. And it could be something that's worth, following up on, and so when we talk about generational things, we talked about we focused on the women. I think some of that was present in my grandmother on my mother's side because she hadn't been feeling good for a long time. And when she finally went to the doctor, she had cancer that had spread to her brain.
Mm.
When she finally went,
Mhm.
and at
Mhm.
that point, it was just downhill after that. And I remember my granddaddy being so angry that she didn't take the time to go sooner. Like once she passed, he started drinking heavily, even more so. And that was the thing. It was anger there that she didn't take care of herself. And this is the result,
Mhm.
and then sometimes it feels like eh, dark alert. But sometimes it even has gone as far as feeling like a sweet revenge that everyone will feel when I'm gone because you don't have me there anymore to do all the things, so it just seemed like a removing myself in all situations always felt where I felt like undervalued or not cared for. It seemed like, or even if I disagree, it just seemed like a revenge, that I'm giving to the other person. So as I live and feel resentful, about all
Mhm.
the thought of death is like a sweet revenge in a warped way.
Let me backtrack for a second. When you were talking about when you first brought this up and you said that you feel that you could, you know, you would be okay if you went at any time. Like that's what was a thought that you had. When you think about that, like is that coming from like a place in your spirit where you feel like your spirit is tired or weary, or is it coming from a physical place where you feel like your body is tired and weary, or your mind? Like what can you are you
It's
able to
coming
hone that down?
mhm. It's coming from a spiritual place. It's coming from frustration that I'll never be the version of myself that I want to be. And if I continue I would rather not be here if I can't get to that place because I'm just doing harm to myself and potentially to other people around me. Because there's a frustration, there's a huge desire to grow and a frustration that with myself for sometimes not doing the things that I need to do to grow. and also a fear that I'm never gonna get to this state of myself. And it's internal, it has nothing to do with external, just and the things it would sound crazy because the ways in which I want to grow, it's just a desire to be better. And it's so many people who will look at me crazy because they'll say that I'm sweet and that I'm giving and that I care about others and that I work hard and you're a great mother and you're a good wife. And they say all these things, but to me, it's not good enough.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm not doing enough. And there's just that constant feeling. And then there's a frustration and there's a like a depression that cycles through. Like, I'm never going to get there. And if I'm never going to get there, what is the point? Because I don't like this version of me. And if this is what I'm stuck with, I don't want it.
So, do you have an image well, you have an image of the person that you wanna be, and describe that person.
Um, I want to be, I want, I'm going to start broad. I want people to be able to see the presence of God in me when they interact with me. Um, that's the number one goal. I want to feel genuine in everything that I do. I want to always give my best, and I want to be, I don't know how else to break down the word good, but a really good person. Um, I want to operate with a purity. I don't want to overthink. I don't want to overthink everything. I want the things that I do to be instinctual and pure.
So, what you want takes some work. I mean, what we anything that we want is it takes some work, and it
Mhm,
doesn't have to be, um, you don't have to put pressure on yourself, like, "I wanna do this by Friday," you know? It's not like that, but do you understand that that part of it, that you have to
mhm,
and even so, I have this friend that I adore, and I've known this person for decades, and I'm trying to make the point that we cannot run away from the work that we need to do, and she needs to give herself, um, space to heal the things that hurt her, and she just spent several months, and she was out of the country, and she was doing things that really fed her spirit. But then when she got back, she was back around the things that hurt her, that, her wounds.
mhm,
And, it's our wounds aren't going anywhere if we don't focus on them and let ourselves heal and do the work that we need to do. And so, you get to the things that you were talking about, like you said you want people to look at you and see the spirit of God in you. You wanna feel the spirit of God in you,
mhm,
right? You wanna and so that requires engagement with God. You already are what you want to become, what you're saying you want to become. You're already there. You're already that person. You are already that person that you wanna be. You just have to do the work of spending time with that aspect of yourself, because 'cause you're already that.
yeah, and I appreciate the reframing of the you wanna feel the presence versus people, because there, that goes back to the whole, I want people to, you know what I'm saying, versus it being something that's mine, you know,
Yeah.
and I possess for me and only
Yes.
for me. And as a result of me having that for me and only for me, other people get to experience the benefits of it being for me and only for me, but it has to be for me. So I get that. And two, when you talk about the wounds, I can say for me, when you were talking, I was thinking about when you were talking about your friend and her wounds, I was wondering if she knew them. Because for me, when I was going to therapy, I realized that some of my wounds I was not aware of. And there's a lot of times that I've learned that I can disconnect from the things that have wounded me and think that, genuinely think that I'm fine, you know, and then something can come up that could let me know that I'm not fine. Or as we pull back some layers, like, for example, I didn't realize, I was well aware because I was there, the conditions that I grew up in. I didn't realize that they were traumatic until I was talking to a therapist about it. And I was describing it matter of fact, you know, we didn't have this, it looked like this, you know, but to my mind, it was nothing compared to what some children are experiencing, you know,
Mhm.
so it's like that's just what it was. Yeah, it's unusual, you know. And it's crazy not having plumbing in the 90s in the city.
Mm. I didn't know that.
We did not have working sinks in any of the house, not upstairs, not downstairs. When we took a bath, we would have to warm water up on the stove, pour it into a 5-gallon bucket, and walk it upstairs, dump it in the bathtub, mix it with cold water. You can only boil and carry so much water, so it was a very little bit of bath water in
Mm.
there.
Mhm.
In the mornings, you didn't have time for all that. So usually we take a bedpan from the hospital, put it in the bathtub, fill it with cold water, and take like, you know, hit the hot spots, and then pour it out. The toilets worked, but the sinks did not. And that's just one thing,
Mm.
one condition, you know, in the city in the 90s.
Mhm.
I graduated in 2000. So I lived like that from probably
Mhm.
1990, 1989 to
Mhm.
2000,
Mhm. you
know. So it's unusual, but you know, that's what it was, you know. So I
Mhm.
didn't realize that when I put all those conditions together, how traumatic that my
Mhm.
childhood experience was, and unpacking all the effects of that, potential effects of that. So
Mhm. Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, I was aware of some things. I wasn't aware of that, but like you said, that's one thing of among others. Yeah, it's about, you being in love with yourself and wanting to unpack, that and other things, like so unpacking that type of thing, but unpacking also, what brings you joy and, what makes you happy. And something I've been wanting to say is something that really helped me, and I mean, it's different. Things are different. People have different things that help them. For years, I was going to my Course in Miracles discussion group on Sunday mornings, and I did that from 2008 to 2020. And when I decided to go to this group, I said, I'm going to show up authentically because I really wanted to live authentically and, get to a space of self love. And so, I would talk about it commonly. I don't have enough self love. I want to have self love. And so the point I want to make is that, and I'm not suggesting you do this or anything. I'm just trying to share what helped me.
Mhm.
But the conversations talking about God with people where we're all different and everyone else has a different interpretation, but everything was like there was a bond and there was love. And I'm showing up, as my whole self because God is a part of my whole life. So listening to other people and also dealing with myself at the same time over the course of years was very healing for me. It was very it helped me to grow in so many ways. And it was constant working on myself. And even in therapy, it's not just about being in the session, but the work after the session, working through the things that come up. It just I mean, I'm intrigued and I like that kind of thing anyway, but that's what work is. It's like that internal stuff, we can't escape it.
Yeah, and I think when you speak about your Course in Miracles group, it relationships with people outside of yourself can be so important. For me, I've started going back to church regularly. I've joined a church and I participate in things with the church. So it's not just watching it online, taking my notes, trying to engage in a fellowship, trying to go to some of the events they have, the conferences they have that are for women or for men, or the community activities, just building that relationship where if there is some type of spiritual conflict or turmoil, those relationships are built with like-minded people to navigate those concerns with. For me, when it comes, one thing that one therapist suggested, and you too suggested, that yes, acts of service could be a love language for me, but how does that look in a way that it does not harm me? So volunteering has been, I've identified that as a way that I can still be true to my nature without being resentful, feeling taken advantage of, feeling dismissed, not having any expectation that this person, because I think about you and have forethought, you are going to reciprocate that, in some way. All of that is gone. I can still exercise in my nature of being, but I'm doing it in a way that's more less messy, I guess.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Potentially messy. So, and the things are coming, the work is a crawl and not a run. But
Exactly.
it's happening.
And it never stops. That it does not stop. Yeah, it's happening. It's happening because you're talking about it, and you're doing the work by just this kind of conversation and what you've done before this conversation. You're already doing the work, but I wanted to point out that, to get to Z, what you your first Z, because there's always more, to get to that image that you brought up. Yeah, it requires a continuation of the work that you've already started doing.
So the last question that I have for you, I have more, but the last one I'm going to ask is, at the end of the day, when your time comes, what, and you look back on all the things you've done and the person who you are, what things are you going to be like, be able to take a deep breath in and just have peace that you have accomplished that, whether it's in your beings or in your actions or both? what's your legacy? What's going to bring you the most joy about the life that you've lived?
I'm almost like on the verge of tears because there's like this little thing that I'm like, wow, that's so little, but it just makes me wanna it's heavy. It's not heavy, it's weighty. Um, I think that I recognize that people know my friends and family know how loving I am, and so that means a lot to me, that that's something that they will, um, remember, me for, and what that looked like for me, because what love looks like for me doesn't look like, say, for Lenada or Tonya, you know? So
Mhm,
they might laugh and say, "Oh, yeah, Adrian would do this, and I would never do that," or something like that,
mhm,
so but the bottom line is, I think that's something that they love me for, you know?
mhm,
And, but I don't but after, like, say, when I'm gone, that moment that I'm gone, if there's some recognition by God or, Jesus or whoever the representative is, and they say, um, "You did good." I don't know why that is an emotional thing, but I think, I recognized that I pushed through, and I'm kinda having, like, a thought right now because I don't like when people 'cause sometimes I see on, social media a little post or something, and people say, you know in fact, I saw somebody do a video about this last week, about how hard life is, and this person was like, "Life is hard, and y'all need to just suck it up, life is hard, and, blah, 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 blah." Or somebody might just have a post. And I really don't like that um, concept, because I don't think of life as hard. Like I don't walk around thinking life is hard, but I've been through some things. And because I don't like, that phrase, life is hard, I still feel like, well, I work through it. I push through it. You know, I've gotten through loss, and, of all shapes and sizes. And, um, I think just the recognition of that, for some reason, it's emotional. It brings up some emotion in me.
mm, thank you. I think
I
the beautiful thing about what you said to me is that it just seems like you operate in alignment and in an awareness of who you're living for. And it's not necessarily man, you're living your life in accordance to God's will. And so that's the recognition that you seek because you're trying to live right by your understanding and his will. And so to me, the recognition that that's seen and that you've achieved that despite all the adversities, to me, that's what resonates or that's what comes up for why it's so important for you, you know?
Yeah, and, thank you for saying that. That was beautiful. And I think, it's true. I wanna make the point that, God's will is your will, what you really want is God's will. What I really want is God is it's the same, which I'm saying.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
not two different things. And I think what can happen is it can be hard because we don't see, the thing, it's having faith in something you can't see. It's easier to have faith. Bless you. It's easier to believe this negative thing that's right physically in front of your face
Mhm.
than to, that's easy because it's in front of your face. It's tangible. You can touch it, you know, and or you're physically experiencing the results of the thing. And everything with God is a manifestation. I mean, everything's a manifestation, but you're having faith in something that you don't see, and so I think that's the thing. And but I want to say that one of the spaces that I think because I know you and we've talked about it in the past, one of the spaces that you want to be in is your gifts. You have um so many intuitive, and psychic gifts, and you are connected. Like when you asked me about ancestors, and I'm going back to my great great grandmother, but when you think about ancestors, you're going beyond that because you have a spiritual connection that I mean, you absolutely know that you have that spiritual connection. Not that I don't, but that's not where I live, and that's not apparent to me, even though I know it's there. It's become apparent to you, and you just have so many spaces and gifts, and I see them and know them and think about them often, and so I just wanted to bring it up. I just wanted to bring it up.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the time. Thank you for the transparency that you've given. And my hope is that not only will it benefit me when I play this conversation back, I already plan to take notes, but it benefits other future women, of our generation, and also anybody else who can just relate. It's not only just a conversation, but it's the beginning of a blueprint for how to transition towards self-love, increased self-worth, what it looks like, what some beginning steps might be. So it hopefully it lays the foundation for people who are also curious in doing the work that they need to do to be the people they want to be.
I agree. I appreciate you doing this. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be all this. It was going to go into this kind of depth. But I want to say that when you mention like tools or practices, it's uh, it's baby steps, to just make the time for you and decide what that looks like, and and think about like definitely what brings you joy.
Mhm.
That's crucial, essential.
It
So
is essential.
thank you, Tonya.
Chief, Petty Officer Anderson, arriving.